The next guest who's going to join us has something in common with Lance. Back in our radio days, Lance would leave the studio in commercial breaks and go into our offices.
This is overplayed, Dunaway.
Push-ups and sit-ups and weights. We expect somewhere mid-question Bobby Carpenter to get up and do a few push-ups while we're asking a question, and then sit back down to answer the question.
Who was it? Gabe Eicher that told us he does that?
No, it was the fullback from LSU. I can't think of his name.
It's Hester.
Hester.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell Bobby's sweating right now.
I think he called you a meathead. I think that's what he called you, was a meathead.
That's
Hester
a
did.
catchphrase. Yeah.
That's all right. I mean, that's a term of endearment, gentlemen. So yeah, I did just finish up a workout. I've been juggling some things this morning, and I had to take Karin for an oil change. So that set me back a little bit, but made sure I wanted to get that completed, get that checked off for the day. And the meathead, guys, that's a term of endearment that is affection between a fullback and a linebacker, meaning like, hey, love to hit. We love the inside run game. We love lifting weights. I mean, all of those things are true. So I guess I kind of fit in that box.
Yeah, and look, just to clarify, I'm all about efficiency, and we were doing a show. We used to work for Cumulus Broadcasting, and they wouldn't let us come in during COVID. A whole nother story there. But we had to do the show from my basement. Instead of sitting around my couch and staring at each other, I would just run in my workout room and do quick sets of push-ups because there was nothing to do for 5 or 6 minutes. Just try to be efficient.
Yeah, it worked out. It was good.
So I love that. I would do the same. I've got bands. I've got all kinds of stuff. I've got actually right above me in my little workout room, I've got full collapsible rogue rack. I'd go do pull-ups in between. The problem is, guys, if you come into like a hot segment, then at that point, like trying to make sure that like you're just not heavily breathing and sounding creepy and weird, that's kind of the threshold that you have to overcome. And so I tried to give myself like a good 2 to 3 minutes to get my heart rate back down to like under 110. So I'm not just like heavy panting while we're talking.
I know you're not a coach killer at all, but we were talking about Ryan Day before you came on, and this guy's 56-8. And the good news is Ohio State's won 11 games in 3 consecutive seasons. The bad news is they've lost to Michigan in those 3 consecutive seasons. And we were just looking at the schedule, and to me, with this roster, and I don't know if you agree, the only potential landmines are at Oregon, at Penn State, and possibly Michigan at the end of the season. But if they were to go 9-3 and miss a college football playoff, and he was to drop to 65-11, there's a good chance Ohio State's looking for a new coach. Is that crazy?
Not if they went 9-3, I would say that would be a massive disappointment. And yeah, there'll probably be changes talked about and made. I cannot envision with how successful Ryan has been. Like you mentioned, outside of losing the last 3 games against Michigan, he's played really well in big games. Even in some games, in the COVID year against Bama, Bama was the best team in college football. Ohio State got there. They were a little overmatched. They beat the heck out of Clemson, in the prior game. Like, they've played well in these big games. And Ryan says it all the time. He's like, the objective is at Ohio State to win all your games, especially the last one. And he understands that. So like the pressure people talk about is there pressure from the roster? Like, is there pressure from, Michigan? There's pressure just from being at Big State U in the state of Ohio. I mean, that's the case in a handful of places where, you're expected to go and contend for national championships. And I would say this team has all the makings to where if you're not playing in the semifinal this year, I would say it's an unfulfilled expectation. Like this team has the qualities to get there, notwithstanding some, rash of injuries. But they have all the ingredients needed, and they really have a heck of a coaching staff. And the fact that Chip Kelly came in, I think, is a big deal for Ryan, because if you talk to all these college football coaches, they love the game of football, but they don't actually get to coach a lot of football anymore. They're doing so many other things that you need somebody in there that you can trust to make sure that they can be kind of, your CFO, COO, running the offense and the defense.
You mentioned pressure there, and I believe you. I think 22 and the second teams, they're as good as anybody in the country. At quarterback, though, Will Howard, proven commodity at a different level. Do you think he can handle the pressure of being the quarterback at the Ohio State?
So what's interesting about this is I didn't know a lot about Will Howard before. I mean, I watched him at K-State play a couple of times. And I remember talking to him. He's got a 484 zip code, or area code, which is like northeastern Pennsylvania area. It's like Philly area. And didn't realize that that's where he was from. I assumed he's Kansas State. He's a middle American Plains guy, maybe from Texas, Oklahoma, wound up at Kansas State. And so he was very familiar with Ohio State. He understands, he's familiar with the Big Ten. He transferred here for that reason. I don't think he was oblivious to what he was coming into. And you got to remember, this is a kid who won a Big 12 championship. I say kid, he's like 22, 23 years old, but a young man who won a Big 12 championship at Kansas State. They beat TCU, who played it for a national championship that year. Like he understands, I think, the gravity of the moment. That's why he came here. He knows the weapons that are around him. He understands what Ryan is as a coach, playing with an offense now, including Chip Kelly. So he seems strangely comfortable. And in an era now where there's so many transfers, especially when you come in as that quarterback and it's a pretty established team, it's always unique because you want to come in and be confident, but I don't know if you want to necessarily come in and try to just walk up to the Iron Throne. Like there's some earning that has to be done. Like there's a little bit of prove it. And I think he's really straddled that line really well this offseason of being confident and growing into a leadership role.
Bobby Carpenter is with us at BCarp3 is where you follow him on Twitter, the former Ohio State great, NFL. You now hear him on Sirius XM, and he is with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. I want to read this quote to you about Caleb Downs. It's a quote from Ryan Day to Chase Brown of 11 Warriors. That's a website that covers Ohio State, for those that don't know. We started having conversations with Caleb during the recruiting process of him doing a little bit of running back. It's something we wanted to do. We've been having him in the meetings, some of the individual drills, as a possibility there if he's needed down the road to continue to build depth at the position. How do you feel about that? Caleb Downs, who's maybe the best defensive player in all of America, getting him some reps at running back if needed.
Well, if you watched any Alabama last year, he was active in the return game and very, very talented returner. He's a phenomenal young man, and he's a guy that's all ball. So the only way you can make this work is if the guy has the mental capacity, the aptitude, and the desire to do it. Now, I don't think you're going to probably see Caleb Downs out there all the time, but it wouldn't shock me if they work him in, a handful of plays a game. Number one, it gives opposing defenses something to think about, and their opposing defensive coordinator, they have to practice for that. But if you package it and have him ready to go, and part of it is too, Ohio State's got two really elite running backs, and Quinshon Judkins, who came from Ole Miss, and then Travion Henderson, and they complement each other really well. But after that, the problem is the portal. If you're not the one or two guy, like you're on your way out, and that's what happened here. And so they have two really good freshmen, but they're true freshmen. And so Caleb Downs, while he hasn't played a lot of running back, he's played a lot of college football. And so ideally you would like to have someone, should you need someone with maybe some experience in a game and in a pinch situation where maybe a guy doesn't have a chance to get prepared all week, and you maybe have two guys go down, something happens, that you also have that spare part.
So no Marvin Harrison Jr., but it's always just a slew of riches when it comes to wide receivers. And Egbuka's back. Cornell Tate, who probably didn't have the best year last year, but has a lot of potential there. Jeremiah Smith, though, people are raving about this true freshman. How good can this kid be?
It's interesting. He, I always hear like this guy's the best high school football player in the country. He's best receiver to come out and whatever. And, we're never short on superlatives, and our recency bias now is just through the roof. And I got a chance to watch this kid in the spring a lot. Number one, he's really mature and he's an ultra competitor. But his physical build, gentlemen, guys like 6'2", 6'3", like 215, 220, strong, explosive. And Ohio State has some pretty good defensive backs. And he was working these guys to a certain degree in the spring, and then really competitive about it. I can't envision him not playing a lot. And I don't want to throw the term starter out yet. Brian Hartline manages that room incredibly well, but there was a lot of times where he was the best guy on the field at times this spring. Very, very gifted kid. And the thing is too, he's not a diva. He's a quiet guy. He goes out, he works, he does everything. I think by mid-season, he will be a name that if you're someone who follows college football, and regardless of what area of the country, you're going to probably know who Jeremiah Smith is.
I remember it like it was yesterday. Alabama wins the national championship in 2009. Rival Auburn wins it in 10. Then Bama comes in 11 and 12. Auburn plays for it in 13. Michigan wins it last year. Have you seen a change in desire, passion, and attitude that's always 10 out of 10 for Ohio State and Ohio State's great fans, do you see now, after Michigan winning last year, that maybe the fire is burning a little harder, if that's possible?
Well, I think you saw it right after the season. Obviously, it was a very disappointing bowl game at the end of the year against Missouri. Didn't play well, and guys were in and out, but there's no excuses. It just wasn't a good performance. There's a number of guys that could have left and probably would have been second round guys, maybe end of first, high third, that I think could all improve their stock. But the guys that are going now to be seniors or going to be third and fourth year guys who decide to come back, none of them have ever beaten Michigan. And even some of the fifth year guys, because they had the COVID year that did, so they didn't play the final game of the season. And so these guys haven't won a Big Ten championship. They haven't beaten Michigan. They haven't achieved the goals that they set out to. And so really all of them came back outside of Marvin, who was going to be a top 5 pick. And so I think that's what started it, is there's a desire and an understanding of why they all came back, what they want to do, what they want to accomplish. And when you walk through a building, and heck, you maybe won 33 games, 34 games in the past 3 seasons, there's no trophy that has a year on it with you. There's Big Ten, national championship. There aren't those relics that you'll be able to come back and see 10, 15, 20, 25 years, show your kids. That's a big deal. And I think that there was an understanding of that. And so it's really been driven a lot by this senior group. And it's been impressive to see. It's the oldest team I think Ryan's had since he's been here. It's a very mature group. And yeah, I think that passion, that desire that you're talking about has been omnipresent since the end of the season.
So you played in the league for 7 years, and I'm a huge Rams guy. You played a year for the Rams, not even, but you were in that organization when there was a transition going on. Steve Spagnuolo was the head coach, great defensive coordinator with 4 rings now for Kansas City. Sam Bradford had just been selected number 1 overall, and Stan Kroenke had just been approved the owner for the Rams. What was the most interesting storyline for you during that time in St. Louis?
Probably when Kroenke bought the team, it's when everybody got nervous because they felt like there was probably going to be a pending move at some point in time. And, they were in the argument with the Edward Jones Dome and stuff. And I was just there. I came in, I got traded from Dallas in the offseason, and I ended up being released right in the final cuts before the start of the season there. But that, I think, was one of the most interesting things. And, having Sam come in, I thought Sam handled everything really well. He did a really good job with it. But just, I'd never been in a place before. I'd been in Dallas for the last 4 years. So the thought of a team moving was just foreign, especially a team that you were a part of. And when they were getting the discussions about the Edward Jones Dome and renovations, and I don't know if there was really any good faith effort by them trying to get it done. Those things were just kind of talked about. And it was kind of interesting just to always hear that and understand it. But, Spags did a pretty good job. I think they had made some roster mistakes that they ascended and then dropped back a little bit just due to they didn't really have maybe the veterans they needed. And Sam got beat up, obviously, but it was a unique time right there. They've done a good job. And I think the world of Spags as a man and as a defensive coordinator. He's smart. Just because it didn't work out as a head coach for him there, can't sit here and say that it wouldn't work again. But, his defensive system is highly complicated, but it is proven that it works, especially if he gets the right players in it. So, I think the world of that guy and what he's able to do.
It always seemed dark in the Edward Jones Dome. Could you see across the line of scrimmage? It always seemed dark in there.
Oh, gosh. We played there when I was in Dallas, and I walked in, and we're warming up. I'm like, are the lights still heating up? Is this like a middle school gym? Seriously, I was like, my goodness. Some of the dudes that had 10 advisors, they had them take them off. It's tough to track the ball in here. The ceiling's kind of dark, and the lights it was so dim. It was really hard to get your energy up in a place that just kind of felt like it was on the verge of a rock concert because the lights were starting to go down.
Yeah. That translated to TV. It felt like a really sleepy, anytime the establishing shot, it felt like such a sleepy atmosphere.
You had to save $1 where you could. You can't power the lights all the way up, right?
All right. He is Bobby Carpenter. Hear him on SiriusXM. Follow him on social media at BCarp3. Bobby, always a pleasure. Thank you very much for the time.
Hey, gentlemen, thanks for having me on. Anytime.